Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Power Vacuum. I'm your host, Belmont. And in a move that surprises no one, Star Wars Hunter will be shut down just a year or just over a year after launch. It's from GameSpot. One last Star Wars Hunters content update is coming before this game comes to a close later this year. Why are you even bothering to put a content update if you're going to shut the servers down? Or maybe they're not doing that. I don't know. Let's read. Last year, Zynga debuted Star Wars Hunters, a free-to-play 4v4 shooter that introduced new characters and placed them in death matches in familiar locations from across the Star Wars universe. However, less than a year after its launch, Zynga has announced Star Wars Hunters will shut down this fall. This doesn't surprise me at all because I had only briefly heard about Star Wars Hunter and I had just heard the name. I had no idea what the game was. I didn't know that it was a free to play or that it was a shooter. And I can understand why it failed because if you're going to introduce new characters into the Star Wars universe that have no relation to existing characters, no one's going to play it because the only thing Star Wars has going for it right now is nostalgia bait. They have to put in familiar characters and familiar faces, familiar stories to attract people to their series or their movies or their video games or whatever it is you want because Disney has effectively destroyed Star Wars. Right? I used to be a huge Star Wars fan. I can tell you the exact moment I stopped giving a shit was when I believe it was Kathleen Kennedy announced that the expanded universe was no longer canon. Anything and everything that had to do with the expanded universe has been decanonized. And then they proceeded to basically kick in the door and ransack the entire expanded universe house for ideas and storylines because they have no original ideas or storylines. They stole a ton of shit to put in their stuff. And then Kathleen and Kennedy had the audacity to say that Star Wars didn't have a giant library of ideas or, comic books and stuff to go on. They only had a couple of movies. That woman is insane. She's the worst thing that has ever happened to any studio. I don't know why Disney shareholders aren't suing the ever living shit out of her for making their stock plummet. Because as far as I'm concerned, she's responsible for the stock plummeting. You can say what you want about Marvel. At least Marvel continued to make money for years and years. Star Wars made money twice. Everything after those first two initial movies or whatever, they prequels or sequels. After the sequels, everything's been dog shit. Nothing's made money. Star Wars has been a colossal failure under Kathleen Kennedy. The fact that she's still in charge blows my mind. Anybody else in any other industry would have been fired $4 billion ago. But for some reason, she gets to limp on, fail in a progressive upward trajectory, and keep her shitty job that she keeps doing shit at. That's enough ranting about that. But yeah, that's why nobody cared about this game. That's why it's dying. At least that's my take on it. Because I don't give a shit about Star Wars anymore. You're not going to get me to play any Star Wars game. I'll continue to keep playing Coder, one or two. Battlefront, excuse me, Battlefront one or two, the originals, not the new ones. Although I did like the new story for Battlefront 2, but I digress. I am ranting off the rails here. Where was I? On the official Star Wars Hunter site, I didn't even know that existed. Zynga shared the news that the game will receive its final update on this platform on April 15th. That's right after the Harry Potter convention. Interesting. Following that update, Hunters will remain playable and available for download until October 1st. Afterwards, the servers will be shut down. Servers will be shut down, rendering it completely unavailable. Why does it say that twice? Right? Afterwards, the servers will be shut down. Servers will be shut down, rendering it completely unplayable. Okay, I'm not crazy. It does say it twice in a row. Twice the impact, I guess. I don't know. Zigna also thanked fans for their support and promised to be transparent during the game's final months. We understand this news may be disappointing and want to assure you that this decision was not made lightly. But yeah, they were probably told to shut it down. Your passion and dedication to the game and its community have meant that the world to us, and we are committed to providing visibility and updates throughout the transition process. That's a fancy way of saying until the game dies. Transition process. Although the game is shutting down, Zynga has noted that crystal purchases will not be refunded, in part because this 30-day notice is meant to give players enough time to spend their currency before all in-game purchases are disabled on April 15th. Woo. Oh, would you spend a bunch of money on this game? Yeah, we're gonna keep that. So you might want to spend that money, that in-game currency that you paid with real currency in the game by April 15th. That's some dirty shit right there. Star Wars Hunters Season 5 will be extended by 3 weeks, and Zynga will rerun events and shop bundles that were previously released. The ranked season will also extend so more players can hit the Kyber 1 rank. The final update on April 15th will introduce a new support hunter, Tuya, who will be available for free. There will also be one last ranked mode for players to compete in. Why are you even releasing this character? Hey, we're going to drop this character so you can play her for a couple months. The most recent Star Wars console game, Star Wars Outlaws, also had its share of problems. Whew, that's putting it lightly, which led Ubisoft to issue several updates to improve the gameplay. The next game in the franchise, Star Wars Eclipse, is reportedly unaffected by recent layoffs at NetEase. Is NetEase making Star Wars Eclipse? See, now I got to go look at this. What is Star Wars Eclipse? So there you go. Star Wars Hunters dead in the water, uh, getting shut down. No refunds, kiddos. You've been warned. Star Wars Eclipse shooting for a 2026 launch. Report developer Quantic Dream originally unveiled the game back in 2021. It looks like the Star Wars Eclipse is still far, far away. Thank you. That was painful. A new report about the game from developer Quantic Dream states the studio is currently trying to stay on target for a 2026 launch. But Insider Gaming notes that even 2026 might end up being too optimistic with potential for Star Wars Eclipse to arrive later than that. Insider Gaming added that the sources behind this launch window also tipped off NetEase acquiring Quantic Dream months before it became official. So NetEase acquired this. When did they acquire this? Man, we are doing a chain connection. 25 years of independence sells itself to NetEase in 2022, and less than 3 years later, NetEase is already cutting funding. They overplayed their hand. One major reason highlighted in the report for Star Wars Eclipse far off release, and the report relates to Quantic Dream's issues hiring on new staff. According to it, the studio is still facing blowback after allegations surfaced regarding a poor work culture and sexual harassment. Is every video game company getting hit with these exact same claims? In a statement shared with GameSpot, however, Quantic Dream says its Paris and Montreal offices have grown by 50% since 2021 and noted that the Paris Court of Appeals dismissed allegations against the studio in 2021. So everywhere that has Paris and Montreal studios seems to be getting hit with poor work culture and sexual harassment claims. Happened to Blizzard, happened to Bethesda. Like, what's going on in Paris and Montreal? Why are y'all sexually harassing and giving poor work culture? I'm kidding. I don't know if that's actually happening, but it seems to be quite an interesting trend that all of these places seem to be suffering that. Now, I don't know if it's because Paris and Montreal have really dumbass standards of what constitutes sexual harassment. You'd have to look into the legalities of it because sometimes they're like, oh, you stared at somebody for more than 5 consecutive seconds. It's sexual harassment. When the person might not have even been staring, they could have been staring into space vacantly, just lost in thought, and they were trained in that direction. And somebody was like, oh, I was sexually harassed because they stared at me. I don't know. I don't know anything about the legal system for French or French Canadian areas, but is Montreal French Canadian? I know Quebec is. I don't know. Who cares? Where was I? Star Wars Eclipse was originally unveiled at the Game Awards in 2021. The game is set during the High Republic area because they've got a real good track record for that right now. With the first trailer even showcasing Yoda appearing out at Coruscant from the Jedi Temple. Last year, Quantic Dream CEO Guillaume de Fondoumiere. Wow. Sorry, that's a super French name. Well, okay, let's assume it's French. Then it's probably uh, Guillaume, Guillaume, Guillaume. I don't know. I've no idea. That's a unpronounceable name. Fondoumiere told IGN Japan that Star Wars Eclipse will feature fundamental elements of Quantic Dream game. The developer is known for its previous work on Detroit Become Human, Beyond Two Souls, and Heavy Rain. Why did they need to be bought? Weren't all of these games successful? Well, Heavy Rain was moderately successful, but I thought Detroit Became Human was like well loved and people were praising it. I didn't play it because I don't think I've touched my PlayStations in years. Disney reportedly wants two Star Wars games released each year, with Star Wars Eclipse likely the furthest out from release. Meanwhile, Star Wars Outlaws is likely the next big release from the franchise, developed by Ubisoft Massive. How old is this article? June 29th, 2023. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. I wonder if this is even still happening. They said it wasn't being affected by NetEase, right? Unaffected by recent layoffs. Yet the article they cite, new Star Wars game seemingly unaffected by major NetEase shakeup. Same image. It became a subsidiary of NetEase in 2022. Fondumier said that Quantic Dream achieved its highest revenue so far in 2024 due to the performance of its back catalog. In particular, Detroit Human reached 11 million units in global sales last year. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I thought that game was doing really well. Why did you need to be bought if you have a game that's hit 11 million units? Let's just assume that only four or every game only sold for $40, even though some sold for more, some sold for less, Steam sales and whatnot. If you average $40 per console, look at $440 million in sales. Come on now. The development of our current project and progression is planned, and we are fully committed to developing and launching these innovative, high quality titles in the future. Star Wars Eclipse was first revealed. Yeah, we just went through that. They repeat the exact same thing from their previous article. GameSpot, get your shit together. This is lazy reporting. Set in the High Republic era, with the reveal trailer showcasing Yoda peeking out at Coruscant from the Jedi Council room. That's the exact same line that was in that previous article from 2023. Like, did AI write this? George Yang? Did George Yang use AI to compose this article and then just slap his name on it? I don't know. But there's your recent Star Wars video game update, update. Hunter's dead. Um, and then Eclipse maybe gonna be fine. It seems they're gonna be fine, but who knows at this point? The game's still over a year out, and anything can happen. Disney could yank the license from them, and then they can't do anything. They have to they'll have to pull a Mass Effect, which could be good for them because it was great for Mass Effect. Mass Effect was originally sold as a tech demo for a new Star Wars game, and they couldn't secure the rights, so they had to create their own IP because BioWare had made Knights of the Old Republic 2, so they had experience in the Star Wars universe, and that's why when you look at Mass Effect, there's a lot of color schemes that seem to match the Star Wars universe. Like some of the space outfits are very stormtroopery. They had to change like the sound effects for the guns, and I know that because they originally have like a bunch of laser guns, and they were like, all right, well, we'll just kinetic bullets that fire grains of sand. Boom, make them loud and obnoxious. But time will only tell, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. But we do know one thing: this game that nobody plays is getting shut down because nobody played it. That's all I have for this video today. I'm your host, Belmont, signing out.